Coming up next on the Voice of Alabama Politics, yes, new taxes. Also, the V-Team takes a look at Governor Bentley's victory lap. And Speaker Mike Hubbard is practicing Mafia-style legal tactics. What's next? A horse head in Luther Strange's bed? All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics with your host, Bill Brett, and the V-Team with Claire Austin, Susan Britt, Jack Campbell, Baron Coleman, Charlana Spencer, and special reports with Jonathan Barbie. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to the Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Good morning.
Thank God it's over. That was the longest 2 weeks I can remember in a long, long time.
It may not be over forever. I would be surprised if they're not back.
Well, no doubt
before the end of the year.
We'll be back. But sine die, hopefully it's all over with. Bentley got something he could live with, but it wasn't pretty, was it, Susan?
It wasn't. He signed off on it on Thursday. But it was a really bad battle right down to the very end. I know that, you know, they managed to cover the big five. They got Medicaid, prisons, DHR, courts, and I always forget that mental health. Those were level funded. Everything else was cut. Now, before noon on Wednesday, it was cut by 5.5%. But when that $16 million went missing all of a sudden, how you miss $16 million, I don't know. The cuts got a little more drastic than that.
That was pretty amazing that they just dropped $16 million out of the budget.
But when you talk about that these agencies were level funded, you have to remember they were level funded for what they were funded the prior year, and particularly the courts were cut so much the prior year, so they still are in the hole, particularly the courts.
Right.
The DAs, Luther Strange, and the judicial system, they're just getting ripped, aren't they?
Well, they're barely getting by. I mean, they're barely getting by. The DAs took a little bit of a hit, but they already were, I think, underfunded. I mean, and this gets back to a question a lot of people are asking. What does it mean to be a Republican in the state of Alabama? What does the Republican Party of the state of Alabama stand for? We used to be for low taxation, cutting taxes, or keeping them at least the same, and law and order. Those were the two hallmarks of being a Republican in the state of Alabama. They have so throttled and trashed the judicial system, the Department of Public Safety, ALEA, the DA's offices, and now they're raising taxes. They raise the cigarette tax. I mean, there are a lot of people asking, what are Republicans in Alabama?
Well, listen, when you peel back the banana or the apple peel or whatever you want to say, you talk about all these law enforcement agencies. I mean, I hate to say this, but sadly, it's by design. You've got leadership, particularly in the House, that wants these agencies. They want the Attorney General's office zeroed out. They want DAs. They want any kind of office that has any tooth to investigate anybody. They want them zeroed out.
We're going to get into some of the minutia of how this mafia-style deal that's going on over the State House really fits together. We want to stay on this topic real quick. Paul Busman, Isaac Wharton took to social media and basically said, who are the Republicans?
Yeah.
We're, like you said, raising taxes. We're not for law and order anymore. And I mean, what Busman said, he said, Republicans who chant low taxes and smaller government, you can't find them anymore. Yeah. There's a gang of nine, basically, he said.
There's a small group in the House who has chosen to lock arms and vote against taxes. The vast majority of Republicans in the state of Alabama have given up on the idea of cutting the size and scope of government. They've just stopped. And instead of pointing to key areas where there is the ability to cut, They point to state parks, and they point to law enforcement, and they point to the courts, and they point to things that most people would say, no, we would never want to cut all that. And it's by design. It's by design.
It's deceitful.
It is.
Well, I mean, this threat to close licensing offices where you get your driver's license down to 4. And then they started in after the ABC board again, like that's some kind of panacea. But Susan, you voted for Ronald Reagan your first time in office. Do you recognize this Republican Party?
I do not recognize this Republican Party at all. I don't. I mean, they tried to get through. I mean, Bentley tried to get through numerous taxes when we started out in the first session. We managed to make it down to 4, but still 4 taxing Republicans, not cutting, and like you say, always pushing the buttons that people are going to push back. Oh no, you can't touch the courts.
Well, this cigarette tax is not going to bring in nearly the amount of money they think it is.
It won't, because, think about it. Tobacco and smoking is on the decline. It's not on the rise, it's on the decline.
And they didn't tax vaping.
Right.
They did not tax vaping. And I think the lobbyists did a very good job. I mean,
they did an excellent job. They pointed out over and over that vaping, more and more medical professionals are even recommending it to their patients. And why would you want to discourage a way for people to stop smoking? It's interesting. They've turned it into a situation where the true patriots in the state of Alabama are those willing to take up smoking to help save the state budget.
I mean, it's kind of crazy, isn't it?
Well, and the problem is they tax so many things that impact the citizens, not, other institutions or corporations, or there are, like you've said, there are other agencies in the state that could have been cut, even the legislative bodies and all their monies.
I mean, what, Hubbard's office took a $50,000 cut? That doesn't, I mean.
Oh, after they basically tripled it in the last few years.
Right, they've tripled it. Marsh's took, what?
50,000.
50,000. Kay Ivey took.
She take
0.
any-
No cuts.
No cuts.
No cuts.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think they fear she may be gone.
I guess in all fairness, we must give kudos to Governor Robert Bentley. He said we needed new revenue. I frankly had no idea that it would pass, but he got at least half a loaf.
He did.
Well, and one of the things that we did get in this budget is we got some growth revenue for the general fund, which is the first time. They moved 54% of the use tax over, which will equate to $80 million in this upcoming fiscal year. So that gives the general fund budget at least some growth.
Right.
But it's not over. We'll be in the same fix this next year, in 5 months when we come back. But there are some real issues that they can look at of doing in this state other than taxes to generate funds.
Well, it's like Coach Dye said. You got a perfect solution. Put lottery out there and gambling out there. You've already got gambling in the state. I heard someone on y'all's radio show talking about that this week. Oh, this gambling won't solve any problems. It just brings more problems. Well, we already got the problem.
Well, that's what, they were talking about the social costs of gambling. And once you open casinos, you're going to have people dying in the streets and businesses. Well, we have casinos. We have 3 pretty large, substantial casinos.
Yeah.
There's a tremendous amount of sports betting that goes on illegally that nobody will admit, but it's hundreds of millions of dollars a year, if not more, in the state of Alabama. So I don't understand that argument at all.
Well, Marsh will bring this back up as a way to fix the long-term budget problems we have. He rightfully just left it off the charts right now.
And I hear that the governor's even said that he's willing to bring it up, and they may even do it in a special session, is what I've heard.
Wow.
Well, we're going to let that be breaking news, baby. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more scoop and information.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group.
Unfortunately, this happens too often in families with autistic children.
First nightmare, their child wanders off, disappears, and is nowhere to be found.
Where her body was found just a couple hours ago.
An autistic boy wanders away from home and dies.
Then like the blind man that God gave back his sight, praise the Lord, I saw the light. I saw the light, I saw
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Our most famous country singer, the best in the world, Hank Williams Sr., wrote Your Cheating Heart, which could be the theme of our legislature, but this year it's going to be I Saw the Light. We have seen people like Ed Henry stand up to Mike Hubbard and stare him down in the well of the House. Claire, what in the world is going on?
That's why I put my glasses on, because somebody saw the light. Well, I mean, I just think that Ed Henry has followed the footsteps long enough, drank the Kool-Aid, and I think he's really seeing what's going on out there. And he's probably worried about a re-election in a couple of years, and he's, circled the wagon and figured he needs to do the right thing. And I'm proud of him, and I commend him for doing the right thing. He needs to lead some other people.
Well, it's just amazing, Susan. There are people who wouldn't speak to us for almost 4 years now that are coming over and shaking our hand, and they stopped just a little short of saying you were right.
They're never going to get there. But I think, too, these freshmen that have come into the House have kind of helped turn this tide a little bit.
Right.
Made it okay not to agree with him. Kind of opened their eyes maybe to some of the things that Hubbard's doing behind the scenes or behind their backs.
Well, that's because some of our colleagues elected freshmen that were not ones that Mike wanted elected.
Yeah.
They weren't his hand-picked ones. That's the deal.
Baron, you and Jack brought in a lot of these guys, and these guys are standing strong.
We did. Well,
Not all of them.
Not all of them, but most of them. And during the campaign, it was charged that these were Democrats in sheep clothing, and they were liberals and Obama lovers and all these things. And now that they've been through 3 sessions, a regular session, 2 special sessions, what they found is those are the people who are standing firm and saying, no, we campaigned on no new taxes, and unlike you guys who are drinking the Kool-Aid, we actually meant what we said. We are going to live up to our promises and expectations. If you bring us something where we can actually cut government, we'll be happy to join you. If not, we're going to be against you.
Do you think it was the emails that started to turn the tide when
Yes.
they read those emails where Mike and
The governor.
and Governor Riley are just
I think so. It was
talking
shortly, if I'm remembering correctly, it was shortly after Christmas. It was before they'd come back in for the organizational session. I think they came back in January or something for a quick organizational session. And these emails had come out.
All right.
And you could see scales falling from people's eyes.
Well, they really had to start questioning themselves, because when you see an email in black and white, you cannot deny that. That's a fact in your face.
Well, we used to print facts, and we'd have people go, well, y'all made that up. And I'm like, it's from the Secretary of State.
With your signature on the bottom.
It's hard to make that correct.
But if you take yourself,
kind of
and not to single out Ed Henry, there are a lot of people in his class that are also seeing
Sure.
the light. But he was elected in 2010, part of the Republican wave nationwide. They were swept into office, and they never knew anything apart from a godlike Mike Hubbard, who was compassionate, giving. He gave them money for their campaigns, and then this new class comes in, and they have no loyalty or allegiance to him. In fact, he fought them.
Yeah.
Right.
And now they're pointing out to some of the people who revered Mike that, hey, this guy, I don't know if you've read these emails, I don't know if you've seen what's going on. This guy may not be all you think he is, and they're now seeing the light, and you're starting to see a sea change.
Well, it's certainly refreshing. Susan and I were invited to one of the big Republican Club breakfast meetings, and I was the keynote speaker. And a bunch of people came up to me afterward and said, or me and Susan afterward said, you're nothing like we've been told you are. And Susan looked at him and said, we just left the horns and tails at home. But it has changed, and we've all suffered that.
Oh yeah, but as you mentioned, there's been about probably about 8 or 10 Republicans that were not on the lead team or followed all the direction of Mike Hubbard, and so those older Republicans have been able to help move the new ones along as well.
One of these things that came up during this special session. Now, one of these bills we killed before. A new bill came up. Jack Williams we like to call him Happy Jack for now. He won't be so much happy in the future, I believe. But Jack Williams sponsored a bill that not only would have done away with the campaign laws where you can't raise money. Tell us about that. You know a lot of this.
He sponsored a bill that presumably would have allowed people to open up criminal defense legal funds or civil defense legal funds even. In anytime there was an investigation, I think the word was anytime you reasonably believed or whatever.
Right.
But there were no limits.
Right.
There were no limits as to when or how much money you could raise. And so this opened up the idea that someone like Mike Hubbard, who's under investigation, someone like Jack Williams, who I think had a civil lawsuit, could go in the middle of a session while budgets were pending, while bills were pending, to the people who had an interest in those bills passing and raise money from them while the session was going on as much as they wanted to.
Yeah, but it also allowed for them to lobby, which nobody knew was in there because it struck the language out where it said you cannot lobby the legislature.
Yeah,
that was a sneaky one.
That was a sneaky one, and Jack Williams is doing this a lot lately, apparently.
He has been doing a lot of deceitful things lately.
Yes.
And I would just say that whole entire bill is egregious. There's no question about it.
Yeah, they basically put the raising the money for legal defense out front and then tried to sneak this lobbying thing in the back. So they go, Hubbard can go, no, look, we took that language out. It wasn't right when he comes to trial.
It did one more sneaky thing, and it's not gotten much ink. It took the exception, the widely attended event exception, from 12 to 8.
Right.
8 is what we call a full lunch table.
Yeah.
Okay, 8 is not a widely attended event. I don't know anyone that would say, well, there were 8 people there. It was widely attended.
No, that's
And
not.
this whole thing was designed to, again, get more gifts, get more things for free. It was a bad bill.
Well, and it got caught in the Senate. Our senators caught it, and they killed it within about 2 hours. And it just died the death.
As it should have, and thank goodness for that stalwart senator for doing that.
Well, with the other bill that came out, and we've killed this one now 3 times, the Star Chamber bill, by printing about it. Archibald came out against it, even Whitmire came out against it, but this bill would have put together this select group that had power over the budgets and the agencies throughout state government. It died, but the interesting thing was it was carried by John Knight last time. This time it was carried by Mac McCutcheon. Why the shift?
I'm not sure why the shift, but I can tell you what it was designed to do is, take a joint committee of the House and the Senate, put all the agencies, they'd be able to control them, manage them, take their money away from them, give them money, whatever. And weaken, and by doing that would also weaken the executive branch.
They all could have put a kibosh on the Attorney General's office, couldn't they, Barry?
Well, that was precisely what it would have done.
That was by design.
It would have allowed them to redirect appropriations, bypassing the legislative branch and bypassing the governor. I mean, it was a terrible bill.
Once again, that's egregious too. I'm sure he did it probably because he was told to do it.
Yeah.
Probably. I had to take a gander.
The last one that I saw, the agency would have to go to the governor. The governor would have to come to the legislator. So that would put the governor in the middle of this fight, and that's just...
This trickery and this whole triangle of what they're trying to do to shift the legislative process is
not
outrageous.
Conservative. It is criminal.
Correct.
We're going to leave it right there. We'll be right back with the V's. Stay put.
Sadly, this happens too often in families with autistic children.
Worst nightmare, their child wanders off, disappears, and is nowhere to be found.
Where her body was found just a couple hours ago.
An autistic boy wanders away from home and dies.
Welcome back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. Mr. Churchill.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Bill.
We're glad to have you, Jack.
We're glad to have him on Sunday morning. He brightens
I'm
the
blown
set.
up about like Winston Churchill is.
Jack, we talked last week about this ethics opinion that basically gave Patricia Todd a license to lobby the legislature on behalf of her employer, who pays her a six-figure salary, right?
I don't know how much she
what she
makes.
It's over. It's $100,000.
Okay.
It's over $100,000. It's not a bad organization. We're not saying any of that, but the opinion we think is terrible. Now the Attorney General has come out and said he thinks it's terrible. The DAs have come out and said they think it's terrible. It shows up in Mike Hubbard's motions to dismiss. What do you think about that?
Does that surprise you? I mean, we've talked about this. In fact, Barron and I said that when we found out she got the green light to do this, we said it's Hubbard inspired, so he can go back to the prosecution during the trial and say, look, she took this to the Ethics Commission and got approval to do it. And that's the same thing I've been doing since I was Speaker. And I don't see why this is unfair.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Exactly.
But it's also to try to change public opinion. Mike and his lawyers to try to change public opinion between now and the trial. And, Patricia Todd's just being used by Mike Hubbard. I don't think she realizes it.
No, I don't think so either.
No.
She's a very pure-hearted person. Mike has been nice to her. And she and I have talked before, and she thinks Mike's a good guy, other than he just made some mistakes. But Barron, this seems like it's part of a coordinated effort.
The big loser in this is Judge Jacob Walker, and let me explain why. Judge Walker, in good faith, gave Mike Hubbard's defense team an extension to file this motion that this ended up in. It was originally due on July 24th. Shortly before that, Mike Hubbard's team asked for an extension. Nobody quite understood why. They said they were still collecting some documents or whatever. Well, a couple of weeks later, this opinion comes out. Lo and behold, it finds its way into a prominent place as an exhibit and a big chunk of text in the middle of his motion. That's exactly what they were waiting on. They knew this was coming. It makes it look coordinated. I wonder if Tom Albrecht and some of the ethics commissioners might not have engaged in some improprieties. I just, as an opinion, my thing, I just wonder.
Well, we reported that story several weeks ago. It's finally caught on last week. It got some play. The other story that we reported this week, which I think, and we all know this, is that Tom Albrecht has some very, very close ties to Mike Hubbard, to his family.
Well, they're from the same neck of the woods. They've worked together, sisters, family.
I mean, it's unbelievable. You've got the ethics director, looks like he may have gotten appointed because he was friends with Mike Hubbard's family, or his wife's family.
Mike Hubbard's wife has a
sister-in-law
who was in the Albrecht law firm.
Right.
And,
Julie.
Julie Moody. She the one that was appointed judge?
Yeah, she was also.
So, it all makes you wonder. Now, I'll tell you, the Albrechtons, and Claire, you know them, Harold and Jane, are upstanding, great people. And I've known Tom since he was a kid, but he may have been misled. We don't know. But it just doesn't smell good, y'all.
I'm not saying they did anything
and
wrong.
And the fact that, the Attorney General's office and the DAs have, the president of the DAs right now, have written letters to the ethics chairman telling him, the executive director, Tom Albrecht, telling him it's wrong. Yeah. This is not right. But, back to your point, Barron, I don't know that all the people on the Ethics Commission even knew he was probably doing this. Because there's some on there that I just think they would have raised some eyebrows about that.
Well, it was 4-1, so somebody thought there was something wrong.
Well, and the big question I have, and nobody's been able to provide me a satisfactory answer, when is the last time somebody brought something before, somebody of consequence, an elected official, statewide official, when's the last time somebody of consequence brought a question before the Ethics Commission and they said no? They don't say no. All they do is find loopholes for ways. So it's a get-out-of-jail-free card. They're aiding and abetting criminal activity.
And why do they have these private opinions that unless you learn about them, you can't request them? They say, well, they're public.
Right.
Well, they're not public because they don't publish them anywhere that the public knows about them.
Right.
They can put them on the front page of our. Why don't they just put them on the front page of our website? We'll publish them.
Every opinion.
Every opinion.
Right.
We're good with that.
I don't think the commission has any credibility going back to Jim Sumner.
Yeah.
He told everybody yes. He hail fellow well met. You see him at restaurants schmoozing with the members, and you know, it has no teeth, never has, and it never will as long as shenanigans like this go on.
But the rule of law in our state with our lawmakers is in jeopardy because they're making these opinions.
Yeah, you want to save money in the budget, just kill the Ethics Commission because you're better off without one than having one. Because with one, they're creating reasonable doubt for criminal defendants.
Right.
Without one, at least everybody's on notice of what the law is and what happens, happens.
Sure.
Like the DAs and the Attorney General's office. We don't need an
Just
ethics.
do away with them, save the money, put it towards Medicaid.
It's like one of these churches where the deacons don't deacon, the elders don't eld. Let's just get rid of them
Get rid
all.
of them. Yeah.
Well, for time in memoriam, the DA in Montgomery County was original jurisdiction for white collar
Still
crimes.
is.
And I love Ellen Brooks, but she punted that. She didn't want to fool with it.
Right. You know, we got about 2 minutes left, and I really want to get into this mafia-style defense. You know, I was talking to a former federal prosecutor who said, I said, did the Siegelman people ever engage in the type of shenanigans we think we're seeing with this Hubbard case, where they're trying to get laws passed, where they're trying to get opinions passed, where they're trying to just change the law in the middle of the game? I mean, you've been a criminal defense attorney. Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, most criminal defense attorneys grab the briefcase, make legal and factual arguments, try to win in court. They have tried to co-opt the media, the Ethics Commission, change the law. They got fellow members in there trying to rig the system from behind the scenes. We joke, Jack, we always, all the time say they've thought of everything. They have thought of everything, and they're doing everything to try to put the cards in their
Claire,
favor.
this mafia style, I mean, you worked at the AG's office. Have you ever seen this kind of craziness?
Never seen any, you know, people can say that Wallace was bad, they can say Siegelman was bad, but I have, and it hurts me to say this, I have never seen anything like this, and particularly them being Republicans, because I've been one all my life, and it is egregious, it's awful, and just, you know, if you're guilty, those are the kind of, and you've got the power and the control like Mike Hubbard has, he is turning every stone to try to get things turned around in his favor, because he knows he's in trouble, and so do his lawyers.
Yeah, well, at least in the latest filing where he says he has a First Amendment right to lobby, he does admit that he lobbied.
Right, right.
I mean, I know, really.
That's why he's trying to get that House Bill 18 passed.
And I'm sure the prosecution's going to tell the jury, you know, these guys have thought of everything. They've even gone back and changed laws, long-time laws, to their benefit.
Yeah, these are old laws. These aren't even new laws.
I don't know if they'll be able to do that.
Yeah, I don't think they can do it.
Well, I'm not a lawyer.
We're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You can catch news stories every day on alreporter.com. Like us on Facebook, watch us on YouTube, or join us every Sunday for The V.